Let's talk about some news. I give undisputed world champ the first floor, and I'll give him credit on this. Shaq's comments on Nikola Jokic. Shaquille O'Neal went on ESPN, went on Inside the NBA, and here's what he had to say if his prime in 2001 would go up against today's Jokic. Here are the comments.
2001 Shaq, 2025 Jokic, what happens?
Slavian chicken, wherever he's from.
Slovenian chicken?
Slovenian chicken.
Really?
You tear him up?
Yeah.
What's your stat line? What's his stat line of the night?
I'm
Serbia, by the way.
I'm getting 48. They're going to have to double me. And he probably going to pick him five and pick me out. But he probably won't be in the game well because after you shoot the three, I'm going to right to the middle lane and a whole ring will get 3 seconds. And we'll see. And I'm going to hit way more twos than you hit threes. Guarantee that.
I just don't think they would have matched.
I want to see it. I wish I could see it.
And
They're not putting Aaron Gordon on.
And I'll make his brothers want to fight me because the first play of the game.
You don't want that. You don't want the madness. You don't want his brothers coming at you.
I got brothers.
Come on, Twitter. Come at you with the
brothers.
No, have you seen his brothers?
Have you seen my brothers? Watch this. Oh, see, Candace, so worldwide. Chicken.
All right, fellas. You hear the comments from Shaquille O'Neal. Champ, I'm going to let you go first. How would the Diesel back in 2001 go up against today's Nikola Jokic?
It would really depend on the situation. If it's a one-on-one situation, they're doing 1v1 basketball, then Shaq, that power is kind of hard to match him. Very, very hard. I mean, I'm just going to be very, very honest. There was a point in the NBA where you had to have at least 5 bigs on your team in order to combat Shaq. In order to combat him. Remember Philadelphia, they had Theo Ratliff, Matt Geiger, and Dikembe Mutombo to throw at him in the NBA Finals. And remember how, he took Dikembe Mutombo, rest in peace, arguably the greatest defensive center of all time next to probably Bill Russell, and he took him to the nose and just grind him all night. Now, if it's a 1v1 situation, it goes to Shaq. However, if it's a 5-on-5 situation, if it's 2001 Lakers versus 2023 Nuggets, it's a whole nother story. Because the thing is, the way that Rasheed Wallace used to combat Shaq is to get him out there on the perimeter. That's the way that he used to combat it. Yeah, in the paint, all that belongs to Shaq. But when you get him out there on the perimeter and get him out of his comfort zone, you can pretty much get him the way you need to be. Plus, we got to think about this. As far as passing and playmaking ability, we have not seen a center like Jokic since maybe Akeem Olajuwon. So the way that he would be able to get all of his teammates involved, the way that he would be able to get his playmaking ability, and the way he would be able to maneuver around and get his team maneuver around, I think that they would get him in a 5-on-5 situation. I think that they could get him in a 5-on-5 situation. If it's 1v1, Shaq. If it's 5-on-5, that playmaking ability that Jokic just have and the ability to be on the perimeter and things like that, I will go Jokic. But the thing is, Shaq is always going to say he's going to cook somebody, which I don't blame him. At his peak, he was the most dominant center that you ever want to see. It was impossible to stop him. I mean, it was impossible to stop him. You had to double team him. And when you double team him, that put a lot of other guys in situation in order to make plays. So 1v1 Shaq, the 2001 Lakers versus the 2023 Nuggets, with his playmaking ability, it goes to Jokic and the Nuggets. Because, like I said, it's not going to always come down to Jokic. He's going to be able to get a lot of his players, the other players involved. And he's an offensive force himself. So it's not like Jokic is just a scrub. It's not like he's one of these soft guys that he's just going to go all over. And plus, he's a hell of a rim protector as well.
Yeah.
A hell of a rim protector.
Doesn't get enough credit for that.
61, 10, and 10. So He ain't no joke on them boards neither. So, I mean, I think Shaq will win, but guess what? It's going to be he's going to dominate in the paint. But like I said, if I'm Jokic, get him out on the perimeter like Rasheed Wallace used to.
All right, we got some comments right here. First of all, shout out to Cheeseheads and the Bear Podcast. Please go like and subscribe to their podcast, IG, TikTok. Dwayne Coleman, go check him out as well. Shaquille O'Neal, damn well, he too big to be a police officer. I mean, he ain't lying there. He also has Shaq. D-Hop says Shaq played in an era when big men was allowed to stay in the lane, but now that 3 seconds in the lane on both sides of the call can be crucial. Champ, I do agree with you. If this were out in the park, perhaps Shaq has a chance. Shaq has a chance of beating Jokic because again, Jokic can't rely on passing, but don't sleep on Jokic as far as with his playmaking and as far as his ability to shoot from within the mid range. Jokic has a nice soft touch around that area.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 5-on-5, it depends on which era, champ. If it were the early 2000s, yes, the Lakers. But if you're looking at today's game, based on how the game is operated with the spacing and how the way that Jokic can handle and distribute the basketball, I go with Jokic in that end. But to be honest with you guys, I got to admit, and I'm a huge Jokic fan, I still to this day consider Jokic the best basketball player in the game. He's getting a lot of flack, a lot of criticism. Remember Marcus Morris when he went on First Take and he claimed that Nikola Jokic is not even a top 20 player of all time, despite Jokic winning 3 league MVPs, a championship, finals MVP. You know, he joined James Harden as well as another player to have a 60, 10, and 10. And with, I don't know what Jokic is going to have to do in order to get the respect that he's getting. I don't have a problem with Shaq feeling that way because, again, he is entitled to his opinion, and Shaq can back it up because he is the Diesel. He was the most dominant player at that era. But don't you find it interesting, champ? You know, because remember, first things first, Chris Broussard. I have nothing but respect for Chris Broussard. He said it is disrespectful for LeBron to say that Giannis can dominate back then in that era. You think it's kind of disrespectful for the old school players to say that in that era? And again, I don't have a problem with them saying it because they have the game. But I feel like nowadays there's been a lot more disrespect to the modern era. And shout out to our guy Flash, and please go check him out on Undisputed World Champs podcast. Go like and subscribe to that podcast as well. Flash is tired of so many of the younger guys saying, we're done with the 90s. We're done with the 90s. Now it seems like to me, we're probably done with today's time. It seems like to me, the old school cats are hating on the young era. Am I lying, champ?
No, and it's funny you bring that up because I actually made a vid about that today on TikTok. And the thing is, look, I hate this whole double standard situation, if you really want me to be honest. So it's okay for you to call my era soft. It's okay for you to say this is the softest basketball has ever been. It's okay to say you'll cook my generation. But when I go back and say I will cook every last one of you plumbers that played in your generation, all of a sudden it's disrespect. Respect goes both ways, last I checked.
Facts.
Respect goes both ways, last I checked. So if you don't want me talking about your era and how I would come back and cook you, then don't come to my era talking about how much you'll cook me. It's kind of like that adult child like syndrome that a lot of, you see at BRF down south. Mm-hmm. So you see it all the time. You know, you get a lot of the more grown people, down south that, respect your elders. I'm like, okay, we understand that. But the thing is, I'm still grown. That's the whole thing. That's how I feel with this whole NBA situation. They always tell the younger player, respect who came before you. But the thing is, the era that came before me is always disrespecting my era. And the thing is this, we always give credit to the old school guys and say, hey, the nutrition was not as good back then. The strength and conditioning programs were not good. We always say that for that generation. And we realize that. But you got to understand, a lot of guys from this generation, they're handcuffed by some of the rules. Can you imagine what Draymond Green, how much of a force that Draymond Green would be if we was playing bad boy Pistons rules basketball? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine the damage that he would be doing if he was allowed to play that form of basketball? I'm talking about just Draymond Green alone. He would be held in higher regard than he even is now. Because that enforcer mentality that he has, unfortunately, nowadays we call that dirty play. Back in them days, it was accepted. So if we were still playing bad boy Pistons rules, then guess what? Draymond Green will be held in higher regard, especially with his defensive play. When you think about Giannis, at one point we was comparing him to Shaq.
Yes. Even Shaq said it. Even
Exactly.
Shaq said it himself. He said he's the guy who can have the Superman cape because he plays exactly the way that I play. Easy shots, post up, take my size, use my size as my advantage.
Yes. And not only that, he has a 3-point shot. He has
Yes.
the outside. He can play the perimeter. So guess what? These modern day players get so disrespected because you can't go out here and just pulverize somebody when they come into the lane. It's anything, you have to be more skilled now because you can't do that. You have to find other ways to play defense. Same thing with football. So for the older generation to keep coming back and just disrespecting these young players, and I'm an old head myself. Sometimes I have my criticisms about the modern NBA. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to get on the air and lie. Sometimes I look at it and say, yeah, it was a little bit better back in the era. But at the same time, you have to have that respect for these players nowadays because guess what? It's a year-round sport nowadays. Year-round. Especially if you have to play in the Olympics or something of that nature. And so I think modern-day players do get disrespected a lot by previous generation. And the thing is, when the players of this generation say, I can cook the previous generation, they're really not saying it in those terms. They're only saying that I can play in that generation. That's all they're saying. When he said Giannis can put up 200 points,
LeBron.
how is it disrespectful? How is it disrespectful for anybody to say that I can put up 200, that someone as powerful, as skilled, and has the basketball paralysis as Giannis to say he can score 200 points in the game in the 70s? How is that disrespectful? How? They said that Jordan needs, when those same old men, my generation, I will say, and I'll put that out there, they say that Jordan would average 60 if he played today. So what's the difference in what we're saying? What is the difference? You're saying that you would average 60 in my era, and we accept that because of how great you are. But when I turn around and say I put up 200 in the game in your era, all of a sudden it's disrespectful all of a sudden. Why is that?
That doesn't make any sense to me, considering Giannis and his accomplishments. He'll never be Jordan or some of these all-time greats, but Giannis is a 2-time league MVP, a former defensive player of the year. He's one of 3 men to say I've won MVP and defensive player in the same year. That's Hakeem Olajuwon and Michael Jordan. 2 of them are first ballot Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
Therefore, why is it disrespectful? And again, you bringing up LeBron James when he went on Pat McAfee show and he mentioned that. I've said this to BRF and he'll attest. If you want people to be honest, whether you like or dislike their opinion, hey, it's their opinion. I think Giannis would have been fine in that era because of how Giannis is as far as developing his skill. Giannis has a will. The reason why a lot of these, and by the way, for Shaq, for these old cats to have a problem with what Giannis would do in their era, a lot of these old cats actually like Giannis compared to the modern day players. Because when you look at Giannis, he's a guy who works hard, gets better each and every year, doesn't communicate with a lot of these modern players in the off season, doesn't work out with them. And yet LeBron James, who is considered the GOAT or the second greatest basketball player of all time, he's telling you what LeBron would have done in that era. And so many of the old school guys have a lot of respect for Giannis. And you think it's a problem to say that? But meanwhile, you said in today's game, you would have done this. Well, imagine if the old school players, if they would have played in that era, remember the no hand check rule. So you can't guard players back then like it is currently, the spacing and stuff like that. But again, if you can't even give your honest assessment, and if you can't give an opinion, I mean, look, it's their opinion. Whether you like it or not, it's their opinion. But to your point, champ, how is that disrespectful? And the problem I have with Jokic, and I've made the argument, Jokic, in my opinion, is still the most disrespected player in the NBA because I feel like nothing is enough. Nothing is enough with him. I'm still getting constantly bleeped on by the media, by the public. By the way, whether him or SGA for the MVP, hey, I mean, it's tough. You can't go wrong with SGA based on the year that the Oklahoma City Thunder are having, but you can't go wrong with Jokic either. Some people, they'll probably make the argument against Jokic because of what voters fatigue, because he's already won 3 MVPs. But when I look at Jokic, I've won 3 league MVPs. I became one of the first few players to have 2,000 points, over 1,000 rebounds, 500 assists, at least in a season. I've won a championship. I've won a finals MVP. I've established myself as one of the best players in the NBA, and still it's not enough. It's not enough. And I just hate that because, again, why can't we appreciate the art? Why is it right now that we hating on the art right now, but when the art is gone, when the players are gone, then suddenly we want to give them their flowers?
I think a lot of that has to do with him not being an American basketball player as well. I think that a lot of that has to do with him being a non-American basketball player. I really do.
Or the fact, champ, that he plays in a small market in Denver. He's not really known as marketable. Jokic doesn't really talk a lot. Jokic doesn't have much of a personality. But yeah, to your point, he is from Serbia. But I don't know, champ. It just seems like to me they just don't want to give Jokic his flowers. But when he retires, then all of a sudden they'll give him his flowers. I feel like, listen, I'm not going to be around forever. At least give me my flowers for now, because you probably won't see this again.
Probably not. And the thing is, I think that a little bit of that goes to the Tim Duncan syndrome. What do I mean by that? Tim Duncan is considered the top power forward of all time, yet he never comes up in GOAT conversation. He never comes up in GOAT conversations. Why? He played in a small market in San Antonio, number one. Number two, he wasn't necessarily a big talker. He didn't have the biggest personality in the world. And although he won, like I said, it's a small market. You might be the king in your market, but on the national stage, it's not necessarily it. Matter of fact, him and LeBron James was a part of the lowest rated finals in NBA history. Hard as that is to believe. That finals between him and LeBron was the lowest rated finals in NBA history.
The conference finals.
No, the NBA finals in 2007. That was the lowest rated finals.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, champ. Yeah. I apologize.
Oh, no. Ain't no need to apologize, bro. So, but he wasn't considered necessarily marketable. He wasn't considered necessarily the media darling. He didn't have that big, huge personality. Greg Popovich was his coach, who was a non-Hollywood type of coach, unlike Phil Jackson. And so, although he's considered the best power forward of all time, won more MVPs than Kobe and Shaq during their era, and was the only person to put them to the test during their respective era.
Not to mention, won them back-to-back years.
Yeah. So, not to mention, think about the teams that Tim Duncan beat. He beat the New York Knicks. He beat the New Jersey Nets. He beat the Miami Heat at their best. He beat the Detroit Pistons. Beat the Detroit Pistons, that superstar defense that was holding teams to under 60 points. We'll never see that again. Beat some of the greatest teams of all time in order to get to the finals and win. And yet, although he's considered the best power forward of all time, he's not often brought up in GOAT conversation. Like I said, I think that's what's happening to Jokic at this point. He doesn't have a big personality. He's in a small market team. He's not a look at me type of guy. It's like he punches his clock and he takes his behind home. And that's what I believe he suffers from. Whereas a lot of these other players are look at me, look at me. Jokic ain't like that. I'm here to score points, win basketball games, and get the crap out of here. And I also think that's why that Kareem is not looked at and put more in the GOAT conversation, because he was just stoic. He was very, very stoic, just like Tim Duncan and Jokic. I believe that that's why those three players, even when they retire, they don't end up in a lot of GOAT conversation, because they wasn't these big personalities. They wasn't these
flamboyant.
It's like they were stoic. They wasn't this. You couldn't throw a market campaign at them. Like I said, they were stoic. They were very, very standoffish with the media. Remember when Jokic won the NBA championship, the only thing he kept saying to the media is, I want to go home.
Yeah.
I want to go home. And he said, oh man, the parade tomorrow, I want to go home. That's the only thing he kept saying. So that's what I believe he suffered from. It's like that Tim Duncan, Kareem effect, because of their personality, because they were so stoic, because they're so standoffish with the media. A lot of conversations they don't end up in. If you really want me to be honest with you, the best basketball story in the history of basketball has to be Kareem. He won in high school, the highest recruited basketball player in history, coming out of New York. Then you go to UCLA, win 3 championships, had that winning streak going on with
the great
Coach
John Wooden.
Then you go win in a small market with the Milwaukee Bucks with the great Oscar Robertson. Then you are the dynasty of dynasties in the 80s and is a part of the greatest rivalry of all time with Bird and Magic. You can't talk about the Bird and Magic rivalry without Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in that conversation. Can't talk about the all-time leading scorer without talking about Kareem. And ironically, he was the all-time leading scorer before LeBron. People didn't start calling LeBron the GOAT until after he passed Kareem, but yet Kareem was not in that conversation. So that's what I blame it on. It's like the look at me guys get more attention than the quiet guys. And I think that's why Jokic and a lot of the more quiet guys, including Kareem and Tim Duncan, get the most disrespect, because guess what? They're not look at me guys. And it's sad.
Shout out to Casual. Shout out to our guy Casual, because he made the argument for Tim Duncan top 5 all time. And you can make a strong argument given Tim Duncan's resume, his body of work, his impact, his style of defense. I mean, Tim Duncan is not flashy to a lot of people, but he is Mr. Big Fundamental. And when it comes to moments, clutch moments, he's there. So BRF, what are your thoughts on what Shaq said on what he would do to Jokic, current Jokic, and much more, man?
Well, I mean, in terms of just the 1v1 man-on-man game, I mean, he said nothing wrong, because that's who Shaq was as a player. At his peak, he's the most dominant player in NBA history at his peak. I mean, so in a 1v1 setting, with just worrying about, at the end of the day, getting the ball in the hoop, he's not wrong. There's no center ever that could guard Shaq at his peak. None ever. That includes Bill Russell. That includes Kareem. That includes Wilt. There's no other center at Shaq peak that could defend Shaq, because he was just a different breed. It was his size, the athleticism that he had at his size, and just his sheer will to just be able to get a basket at any moment's notice. I don't think any center at his peak could have ever guarded Shaq. So in a 1v1 situation, yes. Now, a 5v5 situation, I'm taking the 0-1 Lakers over the Nuggets. If you're looking at scheme and you're looking at players and you're just looking at how they operated, I don't think. And you look at the depth of those rosters. If you're looking at a team perspective, I'm taking the 0-1 Lakers, because those 0-1 Lakers were just, for how they were cut, like with Phil Jackson as their coach, the offense, running the triangle,
Triangle.
and the way they play, and the way they play defense. I mean, the 2001 Lakers. I mean, come on, man. 15-1. I mean, 15-1 playoffs. I mean, it was one of the greatest playoff runs of all time. And it was just how they were just systematic about it. They were very, I don't know. It was almost like a kind of, they had like a method to the madness, and it just worked for those Lakers. Now I will say this though, in the 5v5 setting, like, I mean, y'all pretty much hit it on the head. The reason why Jokic is going to get his is the fact that the Denver Nuggets are able to scheme offensively in such a way that Jokic is going to be able to get his, Jokic let's face it, Jokic is an amazing, he's a 3-level scorer. He's a 3-level scorer. He can shoot the three. He's got the mid range. When he needs to get in the post, he can get a bucket in the post. So he's an amazing 3-level scorer. He's an elite 3-level scorer. His playmaking, his ability to get his teammates involved, Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., et cetera, to be able to kick out and be able to get his guys open looks, open threes. I can only imagine how many created points he averages a game. And that's shots, and that's basically his scoring as well as his playmaking. I can only imagine how many created points he averages a game, because there was a debate, and there was not necessarily a debate, but there was a debate a while back as far as like who are the greatest offensive players of all time. And a lot of that factors in like the created points, like the points that they're responsible for, whether it's scoring or assisting as far as their playmaking. I can only imagine what he averages a game in that. In a 5v5 setting, Jokic is going to be able to get his, because you're not necessarily going to be able to key on him, especially the way offenses run and the schemes, the constant screens, the constant pick and rolls, the constant movement, and just the reason why I do say the 0-1 Lakers would beat them is because with the triangle offense is predicated on playmaking, is predicated on ball movement, particularly in that scheme. With shit like, I think the 0-1, if you want to talk about the triangle offense, then it was basically, I'm trying to remember the third leg of it. It's basically, well, honestly, it was really Shaq, Kobe, and a lot of the time that third leg was just mainly like who was hot at the time, because those offenses was basically built around Shaq and Kobe. That third leg of the triangle offense is usually at the time, it's usually who was hot, who had the hot hand at the time to be able to run that offense, be able to run it smoothly, and it didn't matter who. One night it could be Derek Fisher. One night it could be Brian Shaw. One night, just whoever's throwing it up at the time, whoever's scoring at the time. That's just what it was predicated on. But I will say this though, Jokic is, for me, Jokic is the best player in the world. He is the best player in the world for me right now, and just, oh yeah, the stat that you dropped, the joint. Okay, it was James Harden and Luka, the only players to do a 60-10 and 10. The only players to do a 60-10 and 10. It's him, it's Harden, it's Luka. That's it. Only three players to do a 60-10-10 triple double. To hear 60-10 and 10 for one is insane anyway, considering Giannis just dropped the 35-17-20.
20.
Yeah, the fact that Giannis just dropped a 35-17-20, and the fact that we're still talking about Nikola Jokic dropping a 60-10-10. It's insane. A lot of the skill level of these skill players today. The era argument, I think it kind of this is why I'm tired of hearing the argument against eras. Like, I don't mind talking about like what this player would do in this era, what this player would do in this era, how they could adapt and things like that. Because that's why a lot of times when you hear the term generational player thrown out there, that sparks debate. Larry Bird, generational player; Magic Johnson, generational player; Michael Jordan, generational player; Wilt Chamberlain, generational player; Bill Russell, if you want to call him a generational defender, absolutely generational defender. There's generational talents in every era. I feel like people might not want to hear this. to on the lower end, Jerry West. You could say he's a generational player. Some of the numbers he put up late 60s, 70s, some of those numbers he was putting up rival a lot of the numbers that the players are putting up today. It's all about, it's like people don't want to have, regardless of whether it's yesteryear or the older, golden era to this era today. It's like people don't want to have healthy debates about stuff. It's okay to agree to disagree. At the end of the day, understanding what basketball is and what it was and what it is. I mean, like the old head, because like I said, Champ, hey, everybody, I'm 2 years older than Champ. I'm 2 years older than Champ. So it's one of those things where it's like I feel like we just have to really, if we're gonna analyze the game, we need to analyze the game. We need to do it from a true sports perspective. And like I said, not too long ago, I don't mind the era comparisons. I will say this though, because y'all talking about, I don't like the guy, the 2000s, the 90s, the 80s supporters. Yeah, they definitely need to quit with disrespecting this generation, because they got to understand the game is going to evolve. A lot of the players, that's why you hear a lot of fans we talk about the Jordan layups and all this other stuff, and they'd be like, well, such and such just did that not too long ago. Because it's like a lot of this stuff is more common because of the evolution of the games in terms of the skill, the athleticism, and everything. But I will say this though, to this generation, yes, the game has evolved. We ain't going to give you a cookie now, because in 10, 20 years, the game is going to evolve again. And the way you look at yesteryear, when the game evolves again, those fans and those players are going to look at this era the exact same way this era looks at that era. That's why a lot of that kind of needs to, if you're going to do it, just do it from a healthy sense. Too many times it's insults being thrown around and trying to call people out their name and stuff like that. At the end of the day, sports is analysis, it's opinion based. It's fun. It's fun though. It's fun and as entertainment. And this is why we do this. We do this because it's fun and it brings life to the world today and the situation that we live in and all the craziness that's going on in the world today. Sports is supposed to be a beacon for that. It's supposed to be a light for that. And you don't necessarily want to darken that with all these, this debate here and this debate there, but you're not keeping it in a healthy thing. I like hearing about what Michael Jordan could do and what Michael Jordan could do in this era with no hand checking and players not just being able to just get on you like that, because people are like, well, Michael Jordan wasn't the greatest 3-point shooter in the world. Michael Jordan is arguably the greatest mid-range in the history of the sport. Because they say, oh, we're just going to give him the Giannis treatment. Michael Jordan's going to pick you in apart in the mid-range because that's his game and that's what he did. Could you imagine, but let's make it fun. Could you imagine Reggie Miller today? Could you imagine Chris Mullin today? Some of the greatest 3-point shooters then. Could you imagine them now are you
kidding me? They would do even much better compared to what they did back then. And plus, we know how great they are in terms of the catch and shoot and how they move off the ball and in screens.
The game today is so predicated on players' ability to catch and shoot, coming off of screens, coming off of pick and rolls, just the motion offense. How it's so predicated today. The catch and shoot is so prevalent today. Guys like Reggie Miller would have a feast in this era with the catch and shoot and just being able to catch and shoot. You ain't got to, what I'm saying? Klay Thompson, hit 14 threes in a game with 2 dribbles? Come on.
You mean to tell me Reggie Miller can't even do that?
Exactly, and that's what it's about. It's about taking the player, dropping it in the air, but having fun with it. I mean, for example, let's take someone off the like a lesser end and put them in a different era. You know how everybody gives Rudy Gobert so much crap. Rudy Gobert gets
particularly.
Yeah, exactly. Rudy Gobert gets crapped on so much, but we tend to forget Rudy Gobert would thrive in the 1990s when the big man could just sit in the post, not worrying about anything, could just stay in the lane, block shots, misdirect shots, rebound, offensive rebound. Can you imagine Rudy Gobert in the 90s? Rudy Gobert in the 90s could be a first ballot Hall of Famer. The way rules were dictated around the bigs that played back then, the Ewings, the Mornings, the Robinsons, the Olajuwons, the Mutombos, like that was like the 90s was like the era of the big, of the center. Rudy Gobert could fit into that. Rudy Gobert ain't got to work, wouldn't have to necessarily, and even somebody like Giannis, we get on Giannis for not being able to shoot the 3-point shot. You put him in an area where he doesn't have to worry about the 3-point shot, and he could just use his athleticism against other bigs in that era. I mean, he would fit right in. It's just all about looking at the player, looking at the individual talent, looking at situations and analyzing it, but making it fun at the same time, and folks need to quit trying to make it so toxic and make it fun. So all right. So to go and okay, I'll go back to the Jokic thing. A lot of it is voter fatigue. It is voter fatigue, and I think voter fatigue. I made a video about voter fatigue. As a matter of fact, I made a video about Jokic and voter fatigue. I think it's
like
one of the
Lamar
stupidest things
Jackson.
ever. Exactly. Where people are like, well, Lamar already got, Jokic already has 3, or in Lamar's case, he's already got 2, and I'm like, yo, seasons should be analyzed year to year basis as their own entity. Player's choice. I'm giving a shout out to Player's Choice. They posted a hell of a clip today that I saw on IG. I can't remember which guy it was, but he made a hell of a point that each season should be judged as its own entity. It should not matter what you've done in the past. Each season is its own entity. And I made a video about that when they were talking about. I made the video when they were saying like, "Oh man," it was like, Jokic.
Which guy? Because I know some of them dudes from Players' Choice, good dudes, from Bob, from LeBron, Mars, Chill. Who said that? Was that Mars or Chill?
No, it wasn't neither one of them. It was gosh, what's his? I can't remember his name. He light skin, the light skinned dude. Oh, not Mar, but the other light skinned dude. Always wear hats. Always wear hats in the videos.
Okay, yeah, I know which dude you're referring to. I mean, yeah, I know some of them guys from Players Church. I used to go on their pods, their live streams before. They're good dudes, and yeah, sorry to interrupt you or cut you off, BRF. To your point, yes, it should be judged yearly. Like we talked about the NFL MVP. Listen, I made the case for Lamar Jackson. I'm sorry, not Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen to win the MVP. Y'all said MV3 because of what Lamar Jackson did. I mean, 3rd seed with the AFC, 4,000 yards, 40-something touchdowns, less than 5 interceptions. You look at those numbers, that's Aaron Rodgers' numbers. Lamar Jackson, if you look at the numbers, the stats-wise, he had the best quarterback season of all the quarterbacks in 2024, but he didn't win it. And it wasn't because of voters' fatigue. To your point, Champ, and you mentioned, no, we have to be consistent because the year before Lamar Jackson won the MVP and he didn't put up these crazy top-notch numbers compared to Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, and all of them. Now, again, that's not to say that Lamar Jackson isn't deserving of the MVP. I wouldn't have a problem with him winning the MVP, but I made the argument for Josh Allen to win it because look at what he's had to work with. And what was the knock on him? Turnovers.
Yeah.
So, considering the turnovers, which he reduced substantially, and then on top of that, if you take away Josh Allen, how would Buffalo be? And
That'd be trash.
Trash.
Jokic is doing this People have forgotten they lost KCP. They lost some role players. He's doing it with Russell Westbrook. The Denver Nuggets are probably top 3 in the Western Conference. And Jokic is currently averaging a triple-double as we speak.
on almost 60% shooting from the field.
And what's
It's
so funny
absurd.
about that, he's not getting it, and this is no knock to nobody for anybody. He's not stat padding. It's just happening. He's not doing it on purpose. He's not going up. It's just happening. It's just a natural process. It's just you look up and he just got 60 points. He got 10 rebounds. And the thing is, he can put up he can take 10 shots in the game and be the best player in the league and be the best player on the floor.
Because
That's
he
what's
makes
so funny
up
about
for everything else. And then on top of that, if you take away some of his play of his scores, he's still going to get guys the ball. Even in 2020, when he won the MVP, he did it without Jamal Murray. 2021, he did it without Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah. So yeah, even if you take away some of his shots, it goes back to what Kevin McHale said about Magic Johnson and Bird, and that's what we can say about Jokic. This guy can take 10 shots in one game and still be the best player on the floor because he'll have his 20 points, he'll have his 10 rebounds, and he'll have 10 assists, and he'll only take 10 to 14 shots and be the best player on the floor by far. That's what you look for in greatness, where your greatness is not necessarily predicated on scoring. And his greatness is not necessarily predicated on scoring. It's predicated on his playmaking, his defense, his overall body of work. It's amazing. Like I said, we'll never see something like this ever again. I mean, if Jokic is able to have the longevity of a LeBron, I will say if he's able to have the longevity of a LeBron, we may very well see somebody who breaks all of Wilt Chamberlain's records.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to Daddy Dennis. He said, "Go Seahawks." He felt like Lamar deserved the MVP. Allen played in a weak division, much weaker than Lamar, and 2 games against the Jets and Pats. That matters to me, but still, Daddy Dennis, if you take away Josh Allen's contributions, how would Buffalo be? I mean, they wouldn't be that good. And look, Lamar Jackson still put up great numbers. I don't think Derrick Henry, the acquisition of Derrick Henry, had anything to do with the MVP, even though Derrick Henry was putting up numbers, champ, which is why I disagreed with you about the argument you made about Jalen Hurts top 5. Yes, Jalen Hurts, yes, he does have a good enough team, and all these other quarterbacks have good enough teams. That being said, he didn't have much of the workload as Lamar Jackson had. But if you look at Josh Allen, he did without Stephon Diggs. Remember, Buffalo, at one point, we were having conversations. Is Sean McDermott just going to walk out the door because they let go of the offensive coordinator? So if they're going to let go of the offensive coordinator, is Sean McDermott going to walk out the door? And then when you look at Josh Allen, the knock on him was turnovers. Since he came into the NFL, he led the league in turnovers. That was the one thing he couldn't rectify. And plus, to your point, champ, hey, there's a reason why we're getting a lot of attention. Sports PSP podcast. You have advocated on this pod, as well as Brendan from the Blocks pod, run the damn ball with James Cook. You have often said that. It manifested, and guess what? They've won more games. But back to Jokic and Shaq. Yes, I believe one-on-one, Shaq would have probably beaten Jokic because Jokic can't rely on the passing part. Let's not act like Jokic is chopped liver. Shaq would still win, but let's not act like Jokic is chopped liver. But if you're talking about 5-on-5, if it was in the early 2000s, I would go with the Lakers because of how the way they were with the triangle offense and also how dominant they were as a team. The guys with the bench with Rick Fox, Robert Horry. You also had Brian Shaw. You also had Horace Grant. You also had a lot of other reliable players on that team. But if you're looking at today's game, how it's presently constructed, you couldn't go wrong with the Denver Nuggets. And plus, they're still going to implement the hacker Shaq philosophy. So they're going to take away Shaq out of the ball game because we all know Shaq wasn't the best free throw shooter in the world.
No.
So I think Shaq I don't have a problem with Shaq feeling that way from what he said about Jokic because Shaq had the game, had the skill. Where I have a problem with necessarily is how it's easy for old school cats to say we could have done it in that era, but if someone current had said, "Hey, we could have done it in that era," that's disrespectful.
Yes.
That's the bigger problem. That's the problem that I have. But I don't have a problem with Shaq feeling what he said. Shaq's entitled to his opinion, and Shaq is the Diesel. Shaq's one of the greatest to ever do it. So I don't have a problem with it. None of us have a problem. None of us have a problem with Shaq said. I mean, hell, Shaq's saying this about his game. You got to have confidence in yourself to feel that way. Whether you agree or disagree, hey, you got to have confidence. You still got to validate yourself.